Hi, everyone, and welcome to our November webinar. And we are going to be talking about all things nurse psychotherapy. So if you don't know me, my name is Sara Fung. I am a registered nurse. I've been a nurse for 16 years now. I am the CEO and founder of the the RN Resume. So all things careers. I'm actually an upcoming author as well. My book is coming out in April 2024, and it's called The Wisdom of Nurses. And without further ado, I'm going to let Sheena introduce herself today.
Thanks, Sara, and congratulations. I can't wait to be able to see your book and have it in my hands. It's very exciting. I'm Sheena Howard. I'm the founder and owner of Acceptance Nurse Psychotherapy. It is I believe it to be, the only exclusively nurse psychotherapy clinic in Canada. So very exciting. I've been a nurse now for over 20 years, and I've been in private practice in nurse psychotherapy for the last 3.5.
Amazing. So it's so great to have you today. And before we move on, I just wanted to let anyone know watching on LinkedIn or Facebook, this is live. So feel free to put in questions or comments as we go along. We want to keep this casual. So if you ask a question or you have a comment, I will put it up on the screen, and then Sheena or I can answer this question. But I know there are lots of burning questions and questions I get all the time, and Sheena, you must get all the time. People wanting to know about your journey into nurse psychotherapy and what your path looked like.
Oh, sure. I'm really excited to be able to answer those questions. And Sara, thanks for having me on. When you asked me to do this, I thought a lot about what do I want to tell people about my journey to nurse psychotherapy. And I wanted to keep it as brief as possible, but essentially, from my perspective, it started when I first went into nursing school, in that I knew I didn't want to be in the hospital nursing. I knew I wanted to have more one-on-one time with my clients, with patients. So I sought to do all of my electives in places where that would be possible. And I felt I fell in love with primary care and public health, and I, against my preceptors, my clinical instructors' wishes, I went right out to British Columbia, to Haida Gwaii, where I lived and worked in an isolated and remote location as a public health primary care nurse there. And what I learned was that so much of my job was around mental health and around sitting and listening and holding space for people and their stories. And I got to work with families and couples and children and babies and youth and everywhere in between. And then I had my own kid. Nobody tells you that changes your life. It does, apparently. So we moved back to Ontario. And when I came back here, I moved into full scope primary care nursing as an RN in a physician's office. And in that job, what I discovered was that it was similar here in an urban center as it was even out there, which was there's so much mental health. And I ended up taking other courses and doing on-the-job training so that I could advance my skills. And then COVID happened. Well, we had another child, and then COVID happened. And I ended up working at a school as the mental health nurse clinician there before COVID started. And when it happened, when they called us back to work, the unfortunate piece was that they said that they didn't really have room anymore for a mental health nurse clinician. And they wanted to change my job to working nights, evenings, weekends, overnights, on call. And I was like, it's been almost 20 years. I don't want this anymore. And one of the best ways to tell me, to get me to do something, is to tell me I can't.
Right.
Which I think with any nurse entrepreneur or any nurse in an advocacy role, that's a great way to get them to do something, is to say you can't do it. And so I started looking at the college regulations, the college guidelines, the Regulated Health Professionals Act, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's nowhere in there that said that I couldn't do it. Right. And so after having heard from my colleagues, from other nursing friends, saying like, nurses can't do that. There's no way, you're going to get in trouble. The college is going to take your license. I just one Sunday afternoon, I was laying in the bathtub and I started my business. I was like, forget it, screw it. And so I sat in the bathtub and created a little Canva post and generated a little bit of buzz about this new change that was going to come in my life. And then the following Sunday in the same bathtub, I launched it and said, I'm open for business. And so since then, my practice was full in 6 months, and I haven't looked back since. And it's just grown exponentially to now where we have a team of nurse psychotherapists in the clinic. And I also myself and Ingrid Riho, we do a course to help support other nurses in getting started in nurse psychotherapy.
That's amazing. I heard so many things that I wanted to ask you about. So first is that you decided from a really early time that bedside nursing in the traditional sense wasn't for you. And so you sought opportunities to develop your skills away from the bedside, which I think is really cool, because back in my nursing school days, and maybe yours, everybody told me I needed to go into med surg. And I have posted about this on LinkedIn because you don't have to do that. If you want to, certainly, I'm not discouraging anyone from med surg, but it is not the only way to be a nurse and to be a new nurse. There is so much out there, right? And the second thing I wanted to touch upon was that you said when someone tells you you can't do something, it makes you want to do it. It lit that fire from underneath. And I think that's a commonality we both have. I always feel like you don't need to necessarily ask people for permission to do it, especially you were saying there was nothing in the college saying you couldn't. So
That's
why
right.
not just go and do it? Because when you ask someone for permission, you're giving them the opportunity to tell you no.
That's right.
And so you were the trailblazer, I feel like, in this nurse psychotherapy world that you're in now.
Well, thank you. There's certainly other nurse psychotherapists that fought to make sure that when psychotherapy was becoming a controlled act, that and the title of psychotherapist was becoming a regulated title, that nurses were included in that. And so those include people like, she's up in Sudbury. Goodness, her name is just, it'll come back to me. I'm so sorry. She is one of the original ones that really pushed for that. And I feel like through her, and then also just pushing the boundaries myself, not boundaries, that's not what I want to say, just taking risks that were calculated risks, that felt really, really good. And then to take the risk to say, this clinic is only exclusively for nurse psychotherapists. And I don't want to, I want it to really be focused on how nurse psychotherapy is different than say, different, unique, and also a beautiful blend of all of the skills that we need for nurses. And yes, I would say, I had 2 professors at Queen's in the late 90s who said, sure, you can do public health. Sure, you could do mental health too, out of all the ones I had. And I had professors say things to me like, you've wasted your education. You're only going to be a needle nurse. You'll get stuck just doing vaccinations. Oh, you'll only just get to see babies. There won't be any diversity. And that has just been so patently untrue for the entire time. And I think nurses get scared going into these traditional jobs because we get terrified. We get warned that we're not, that we have to, toe a party line or toe this particular line because somebody tells us that's what's expected of us. And if I'd stayed in med surg, or if I'd done emergency room nursing, I would not be a healthy human.
Yeah. I'm glad that you recognize that about yourself, because I feel like there's this hierarchy in nursing where certain specialties, let's say, feel that they are more skilled or better than other specialties. And I was told after graduating, oh, you should go to this unit to gain your skills before going to somewhere else like public health. But the skills that you gain in public health are just different. It's not like you're not gaining skills or you're not using the skills that you have. I think they're just different and specialized, and we need to embrace each other instead of creating these silos and divides. So yeah, I really love your journey. I think you decided to take a risk, which is great, because I know a lot of nurses want to do what you're doing, but they're scared. And that's really prevalent in nursing, the fear and the silencing of being told you can't do something, or, you're going to lose your job or your license if you step out of the box.
Yes. And if we consider that nurses are still predominantly, that the profession is still predominantly women, we're also scared, pardon my language, pretty shitless on the outside of our professional lives too, right? And if you layer in race or sexuality or anything else in there, it's terrifying to say, go ahead and take a risk. Like, it's not not lost on me that it's easier for me as a white cisgendered woman to say, I'll just take this risk, right? That's not lost on me, and I know that it can be exponentially harder for other nurses in this position to be able to take risks when their whole lives have been risk taking, right? Yeah. And so we combine the socialization of women and the socialization of nurses. We can see how our jobs have always are at risk. They're not valued. We should just be grateful for a thank you. Then we have like the lateral violence in our jobs where people are saying you have to do this, or you can't outshine another person. Our skills aren't valued in the same way. And depending on how cranky I am and how rude somebody is, that depends on how I'm going to answer the question of, oh, don't you think you're going to lose all your skills?
Yeah. So just another burning question I get all the time, and you must as well, is how do you become a nurse psychotherapist? Because I know there is more than one path. So could you describe the path that you took and what that looked like?
Sure. So I focused a lot of my career on elements of mental health and how mental health influenced physical health and families and children and the LGBTQ community. And I was just really fascinated with how to talk to people, how to ask good questions, how to create a therapeutic alliance. And so I spent a lot of my time studying that in my free time, or taking courses in various things like dialectical behavior therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, internal family systems. There's a bunch of different psychotherapeutic modalities that I took courses in, but essentially it was just always my vocation to continue to talk to people one-on-one. That's where I felt, or two-on-one, or with a family. That's where I felt like I could make the biggest difference. Mm-hmm. I did get my master's degree. However, it's not in clinical psychology or anything. It's in health leadership.
Oh, okay.
Which is, for me, has stood me in good stead moving into owning a business. But there are, for many nurses, many different paths. You can do your master's degree in clinical psychology, but that isn't a requirement. When you look at what the requirements are for somebody to practice psychotherapy or initiate psychotherapy, it's that, does the nurse feel like they have the knowledge, skill, and judgment to do so? There isn't any nurse psychotherapist I know that hasn't extended their skill set by taking other courses. So you can take courses from a university. There's great ones at Wilfrid Laurier, great ones at U of T that can help to upgrade your skills. One of the things I think we forget is that people who take their master's degree in clinical psychology but have their undergrad in psychology or social work, well, maybe not social work, but their undergrad in something else, don't spend the 4 years like we did learning how to chart, learning how to document, learning how to start a therapeutic relationship, ethics, and all of that stuff that we already learned. And then we've been practicing for, over, most of the nurse psychotherapists I know have over 10 years of nursing experience already. So they already know how to document. They already know how to do all that stuff that people have to cram into a 2 years master's degree.
Right. I think this is, again, nurses feeling like they don't have the skills, or, I'm just a nurse. Can I be a psychotherapist? But we have so much within us inherently being nurses that we just need to be confident and, be okay with transferring your skills to a different setting. I'm just mindful of the questions that have been coming. So you might have answered some of these already, but one of the earlier questions was, how can nurses become nurse psychotherapists without a master's? So I think you kind of answered that already. You don't have to have a master's.
That's right. That's right. Some nurse psychotherapists feel really confident in their clinical skills, but branching out as an entrepreneur can be really scary,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate because nurses already have the skills to be entrepreneurs, right?
Right.
Like if you look at the top skills of an entrepreneur, like, oh, I learned how to do that in nursing school. Advocacy and leadership being one of those skills. And so there are ways to do it that don't require a master's program. And there are nurses in this nurse psychotherapy community, myself included, that offer that kind of support to nurses, like entrepreneurial mentorship and business support to get started.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question here. So, do you feel that having knowledge and experience in psychotherapy can enhance one's leadership qualities in the healthcare system?
Oh, what a great question. Holy, do you feel that having knowledge and experience? Oh, 100%. 100%. But more than that, I would look at systems theory by Barry Oshry. When we're looking at leadership qualities, we would want to. I feel like my capacity for compassion for people in positions of power have and for men in power particularly has increased being on this particular path of in leadership and psychotherapy. In that, when you are othered in any way, you have to learn how to navigate the system to get what you want. So part of that for me has been tell me I can't and I'll show you how I can. But what that means is that sometimes I get a little irritated and I can't see the people that are in these positions that are above me. And so what I've learned through the knowledge and experience in psychotherapy and also in my leadership program was how to approach them in this system, where they're placed in the system, as opposed to who they are as maybe an undesirable or uninteresting person. So it's definitely giving me some opportunity in that way. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. So another comment is, I was told as well in school to start in med-surg. Their justification was to get a basis of nursing skills in med-surg. However, I felt it was really discouraging, and especially for nurses who had no desire to go into med-surg in the first place. Yes. So I totally agree. And I've spoken with nurses who did go into med-surg against what they felt was best, and they regret it now. And I've said to them, it's okay. It's not too late to make a change. If you are in this situation and you feel like this is not for me, it's never been for me, I did it because it's what I thought I was supposed to do, you can still take those steps to get to a place where you're happier with what you are doing. So don't think that, anything is set in stone, because definitely in nursing, it's not.
Yeah. Goodness, Brittany, that's really tough to hear. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Brittany also says, I find it scarier doing something different. However, the payoff can be much better when you go into specialty you are more interested in. Yeah. Absolutely. I think, both you and I are testaments to just doing what you want, going into the specialty you want. I came from the world actually of maternal child nursing, and I really enjoyed my time there. And after about 10 years, I felt sort of pigeonholed, where I wanted to explore different units, but I didn't know how, because everything I'd done was, more certifications, more experience in that world. And so it is still possible. I think it's just a matter of figuring out what sort of transferable skills you have, because I get a lot of questions from nurses that say, I don't have a background in mental health. Can I still be a nurse psychotherapist?
And I would say 100%. 100% you can. And I would always encourage somebody to get training in psychotherapeutic modalities and get a mentor who's already doing it, or a supervisor, have supervision for people that are already doing it, to help you increase your skills. But chances are, my guess is that if you are interested in mental health and you are interested in psychotherapy, all of your personal life is probably devoted to reading books about mental health and all of that stuff. So you already have lived experience, but also then this interest in it, which means that you're going to suck up the knowledge a lot faster than you would in something that you weren't interested in. And better to be scared than having panic attacks at a job you hate.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Than panicking in a job you hate. Yeah.
Okay, we have one more question. Do you have recommendations for psychotherapy courses?
Right. Right. So great question, Rachel. So the college specifically doesn't give us any guidelines on which courses to take. If you would like to take accredited university courses, Wilfrid Laurier and U of T have really excellent online courses that you can take where you're in a group and you're learning in that way. They generally don't come with supervision in the same way. And the there's also the nurse that's up in Sudbury, and oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I can't remember her name. And all I want to do now is
you can put it in the chat after, or we'll be in the middle of something. You'll be like, it's this name.
Yes, she offers cognitive behavioral therapy courses along with emotionally or compassionate focused behavioral therapy courses and supervision alongside. The beauty of taking courses from nurses and nurse psychotherapists is that you're going to get a nursing lens from it. So that's also the caution. If you're taking these courses, psychotherapy courses, you'll notice that they're not grounded in nursing theory. So things might sound, look, and feel really different, but there's no reason why you can't integrate it into your nursing practice in a way that feels more authentic.
Amazing. I love that. Mm-hmm. Another question from Rachel. Are you part of the College of Psychotherapists? Can you speak about your thoughts on registering and how we can register if we choose to do so?
Sure. So no, I was really specific that I had no interest in being registered at the College of Psychotherapists because I'm incredibly proud. I had to work so hard to get my nursing degree, and I'm incredibly proud of my experience as a nurse. And quite frankly, I really do feel like nurses are the original psychotherapists. If you look at what our job looked like hundreds of years ago or 100 years ago, we were doing all of that stuff. It's only in that modern age where everything started to get parceled off that all of a sudden we weren't allowed to do that stuff anymore. It was taken over by psychologists and psychiatrists. So I'm not. I know there are some nurses who are dually registered in both colleges. In order to be registered with the College of Psychotherapists, you have to have completed your master's degree in an approved course. So you'd need to go on and look at what are the courses and it's usually a two-year program, full-time that would say you can take their test and then you can register. But even the College of Psychotherapists says if you're registered in one of the other 5 colleges that has the legislation to perform the controlled active psychotherapy, you don't have to be registered with them. So there are insurance companies who don't recognize nurses as providers of psychotherapy, but that's changing. We've had some, and I say we because the nurses on the Nurse Psychotherapists group on Facebook have been advocating really hard with insurance companies, and we've managed to get changes to the teachers and also to the OMA, the doctors insurance company, Manulife, that allowed us to be able to for our clients to be able to have coverage. But you will find that that's a bit more difficult, whereas with somebody who's registered with the College of Psychotherapists, it's a little easier to get their costs covered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned the different paths to becoming a nurse psychotherapist. I think that's where the confusion is, where some nurses may feel that they have to get additional training or an additional degree in order to become a practicing psychotherapist. And it's also great to hear that you're breaking down barriers one by one with different groups that are recognizing nurses as their psychotherapists for insurance benefits.
Right. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
It's definitely a great opportunity for advocacy because there's about over 400 now folks in that Facebook group who are either practicing or close to starting or wanting to start, and that is really exciting. So I think it's just a matter of time before the insurance companies will start to recognize that.
Amazing. And if anyone listening has questions, we're here to take as many questions as possible, so feel free to keep them coming. Sheena, could you talk then about what a day in the life looks like? Because I know it's this secret, I feel like, that everyone just wants to know, what does your actual day look like? Is this something I could see myself doing full time?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm really blessed. I have an in-person office where I'm in 2 days a week. And then I also have my home office. And so for me, a day in the life is generally I get to wake up with my kids. Well, first I get to go to my cycling class or do yoga, depending. And then I get to make sure that I drive my son to school, one of my children to school or the other one to school. I don't start work until 9:30. And so I usually have about 4 to 5 clients booked a day, with about a half an hour in between. When I was starting off, it wasn't like that. I just booked everybody back to back to back because I was anxious about making money, which I think is really reasonable for when you're starting. And I get to, and I don't do laundry on my lunch hour when I'm at home. If you want to work from home, I strongly recommend you protect your lunch hours. And then my son comes home at 3 off the bus, and I spend an hour with him. And then I usually see a client at 4 when I'm at home. If I'm in person, then it's a very similar schedule, but I end up getting to pick up my older son from school at around 5:30, and then come home. And then I have my evenings free. Because I'm running a business, I've been able to now book 2.5 days a week where I'm just working on my business, and that's primarily from home. So that's where I would I'd wear my hoodie and get to do strategic planning or social media content creation. I get to use my creative side in a different way. Yeah.
Amazing. I think people really like the fact that you have flexibility and control over your schedule because
Yes.
as nurses, right, we're starting at 7 in the morning, maybe 7:30 if you're lucky, and just go, go, go all the time. And I remember back when I was doing shifts, it's like your life is run by your schedule. And, it's always a constant sort of source of stress. So
Well,
it's nice to hear that you can actually decide when you're going to work and make sure that it works with you and your family.
yeah, yes. And there are, the drawbacks to being self-employed, if there are any, although Ingrid often talks about, my colleague Ingrid talks about the golden handcuffs of working at the hospital or in community where, you have a pension and benefits, and it's hard to let go of that, especially if you have a family. So the hustle is that you're driven by wanting to make sure you can replace that. So nurse psychotherapists generally start at $150 an hour. And some, of course, you have to take off your taxes and then put money aside for benefits and things. And that can be hard for some people.
Yeah.
Yeah. However, it is financially doable. And then you get to be the person, you get to have control of your schedule, and you get to enjoy things in a different way. So some cons and some pros and only a few cons in my opinion. But
yeah, it's interesting because I hear that a lot as well, that the number one fear that nurses have is losing their pension, losing their benefits, being used to predictable income. So a set amount every 2 weeks for your paycheck, that predictability may go out the window for a bit. But I think, like you said, if you're in a position, and I recognize my privilege as well, that I was able to do this, is that you can decide what your rates are. So right now, if you're working on an hourly rate, that's determined by the union or your levels of experience. But I think as an entrepreneur, there really is no limit to how much you can make. It's just taking that risk and going out there and building your business.
yes, and if you're curious at all and you're fascinated by how to expand your business or how to scale your business, that's where the fun and the creativity is, right? Where you can say you see a need and you can meet it in a very flexible way. I often used to wish that when I was working back here in Ontario, I realized the way my capacity to engage in bigger change faster was slow because of all of the bureaucracy. When I lived and worked out west on Haida Gwaii, you could make a change that would be embedded in the system within like a month.
Mhm.
That was amazing. And so I think that's also what drew me to wanting to work for myself, is that I could make change right away. There wasn't anybody saying, oh, but what about, and oh, we don't want to step on, and oh, etc. Right? You can practice in ways of
Right. It's actually quite amazing. Like
Mhm.
all the issues I had with my schedule before, now if I don't want to work on Wednesdays, I just block it off. It's really as simple as that. So like I just think about all the time, all the issues I had getting time off in the past, and it's just vanished.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so nice. Okay, I have a couple more questions.
Oh,
So
sure.
from Brittany, what do you find the most challenging part of your role?
Oh, the to be honest, the isolation. There is some isolation to being an entrepreneur and to being a nurse psychotherapist, because there aren't very many of us around. And it used to be that nobody wanted to put their hand up. Everybody was sort of doing it in secret. It wasn't until Ingrid said to me, hey, I see you're doing this. Could we talk? I was sure. And then as we started talking, we realized there was, we were very connected and wanting to be engaged. So the isolation can be really hard. I would say that's really challenging. And then there's these micro challenges. The first time you get rejected, your client gets rejected from an insurance company, or the first time your client ghosts you or doesn't come back to see you, when you don't convert a client after a 15-minute call. There's all those micro challenges that if you're not in community or building your community can feel really isolating, which is why the Facebook group is great, but then also working in a clinic format feels good for me to be able to have other colleagues around in a way that feels supportive and that they understand the nursing role.
And I think it's important to know about yourself, right? Are you more of an introvert or an extrovert? And do you need that to fill your cup? Because some people could be fine just, at home all day, every day. That would be a dream. And other people, they tend to fade over time. So I think it's important to know that. And just as an aside, every single nurse entrepreneur I've met along my journey has been nothing but supportive. So I post a lot about my experiences with working in toxic workplaces and toxic coworkers. I have not experienced any of that. And I hope that it's been the same experience for you. I've just found it nothing but supportive. And, nurses just wanting others to do all the great things that they can do.
Yes. Yep. The nurses that are already practicing nurse psychotherapy, absolutely super supportive. Everybody's been, we help each other and help each other do problem solving, back each other up on social media. I do find one of the difficult things is when nurses are looking to make a change, and I understand this comes from a place of it is a really big risk. The desire for information is really critical for them. The understanding that it costs us time, the entrepreneur, the business owner, is not translated as easily. And I'm saying this and trying to put this in a very diplomatic way. Do you know what I'm trying to say, Sara?
I know. Yes, you and I have talked about this. So what you're saying is, you and I, and I'm sure other nurse entrepreneurs, they get questions all the time, like, how did you get to where you are? Do you mind if we get on a call? And the expectation is that you give your time for free, which I understand is a natural thing for someone to want. And I think as you get more and more out there, it becomes more and more demanding on your time, and you only have so much free time you can give, right? And that's why you've created this course in your community. This is why I've also created a community of my own. It's called Nurses Breaking Free. So it's for any nurse who's looking to get into a non-traditional role, because we do want to support you, but we are only one person and there are only 24 hours in a day. So I think that if it's something that you really want to do, it does involve an exchange of sometimes monetary money. So that's the way it is sometimes.
Yes. And if I was being really frank, an hour of my time is an hour. And I'd love to give people the breadth of an hour because there's lots of questions. But an hour of my time is a time I'm not actually seeing clients. So, and I'm not, and I need to be able to maintain my income. And I also really do feel like my experience and knowledge and expertise the exchange needs to be monetary, and you can write it off as a business expense.
Yeah.
So when people are, and I haven't had this very often, but it is one of the challenging parts, is that people will often say, well, I just want to have a coffee. And I don't work on just a coffee mentality. I work on, I can't wait to meet you. So excited to talk to you. But when you get me, you get all of me. And that includes all of my expertise. And that is what I've had to monetize. And I don't necessarily love it. It still feels a bit yucky. And also I still want to be able to provide for my family. So, yeah.
It's these challenges that we have to navigate as entrepreneurs, and I think that it just needs to be normalized. So if you're not going to ask someone to do something for free, so you wouldn't expect anyone to ask you to do something for free. I think that's the main part of it, and it doesn't have to feel yucky, because I always give this example to people I speak to. So let's say you have a hairdresser that's a friend of yours. A lot of us have that. Would you ever expect this person to do your hair for free for a coffee? Or would you pay them, even though they're your family member or your friend or someone you're really close to? I would never not think to pay someone, even though I know them. So why would it be any different for us? Because we are providing legitimate services.
Yes. Yep. And I think this is where we've been indoctrinated as nurses and as cisgendered women or women who identify as women, is that we are encouraged to give of our time freely and to take responsibility for other people's feelings, but then also be okay with not being paid well. And that is and even Doug Ford said nurses should be okay with a thank you rather than a raise.
Okay.
And if we have that kind of leadership, I'm not suggesting that that's what nurses are like. What I'm saying is that if we're swimming in that soup, it often is challenging for people to consider paying for somebody's expertise. A nurse's expertise is worth the money.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Okay. Shanelia has a question. What do you use for keeping patient records? Is there an online platform you prefer for online appointments?
Okay. Do you want to answer that question, Sara, or?
Well, I don't see patients in the sense that you see patients. My patients are nurses now. So I use a different system altogether. My booking system is called Calendly, so that eliminates the need for a virtual assistant. In terms of notes, because I'm not doing patient care per se, it's just good old pen and paper. But I know that's not the same for nurse psychotherapy, so I'll let you take that one.
Oh, sure. So I use Jane, which is a platform that was designed specifically for psychotherapists and psychiatrists. And it includes everything. It's your notes. It's an EMR. It does your booking. It does your billing, and also hosts the virtual online platform. You don't need that to start, though. What you really need is, if you're going to work virtually, is you need a place to see clients and a way to take your notes. When I started, I literally started with this. I had a book and a pen and a Zoom account. and I was like, I just wrote SOAP and started taking notes. Yeah, then I sort of just kept working up to until my assistant or my office or my clinical manager, clinic manager now, she was the one that said, it's time for you to have Jane.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just don't overcomplicate things. Just start with what you can afford and what you know how to use, and then you can gradually build more complicated systems afterwards.
Yes.
Okay, so Griselle says, could you give the name of your Facebook group again?
Yes.
Am I allowed to join it to learn more?
Yep. So it's Nurse Psychotherapists of Ontario. And funny enough, Facebook wouldn't allow us to use the words psychotherapist and nurse altogether. So it's shortened to Nurse Psychos of Ontario. So if you see that, that's us. And then there's a series of questions to answer. So please make sure you fill all those questions out. Otherwise, you'll get declined.
I didn't notice that about your group. I thought it was Nurse Psychotherapists.
It is, but the abbreviation.
Oh,
Facebook, yeah.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so Stephanie wants to know, didn't realize there's a course. I came on late. Thank you. Amazing. And Adrian wants to know how often you run your coaching program for nurses.
Right, great question. So there's two different avenues. I offer private one-on-one coaching, mentorship for nurses that are really wanting that one-on-one experience. And then we also have the Ultimate Guide to Nurse Psychotherapy, and that runs once every season. Generally, the next courses start on February 24th and March 1st. And it runs over 2 full days, 2 Fridays. And in between, you get coaching from either myself or Ingrid, and over Voxer, plus access to a virtual file folder full of templates, things to get your business started, and a workbook that goes along with that.
Yeah. Amazing. Stephanie says, this is not a question, but she would really love to connect. You're welcome to connect with one or both of us, Stephanie. I have a very niche idea and thought I would need to completely switch gears and go back to school and get my social work degree. This is giving me life.
Yeah. That's great news. That's great news. That is so exciting. And for sure, once my experience with my private clients, but then also in the course, which just finished, the last one just finished on Friday that just passed, the folks that were in that course were just like the relief on their shoulders. They were like, oh, I already have so much experience, and I already know, I've already taken these courses. I just need the support to get started, as opposed to having to go back to school and spending $40,000.
Yeah, I hear that from a lot of my career coaching clients too. So I think as nurses, I think we just have a tough time marketing ourselves. So we think, okay, I need to go back to school to get another degree. I need to take this course. I need to do this, rather than I just need to talk about how great I am, whether that be on paper, whether that be on LinkedIn, whether that be in an interview. I had a client ask me recently, is it okay to brag about myself in my interview? I'm like, that is the whole point of an interview. Like maybe not the word brag, but you need to talk about all the great things you do, and you need to vary it up. So you're not going to say the same thing 10 times, but this is literally, they're asking you to tell them why you are the best person for a job. So if that's not a chance for bragging, then I don't know what is.
Right. And pride in our work and pride in our experience doesn't come easy to nurses. And I do feel like that is one of the really awful things we get left with from our nursing school, is this sort of really weird thing that we're not supposed to say, like, wow, I'm so excited about the work I just did. You have to be very quiet and demure about it, as opposed to saying, like, holy shit, I just did, pardon my language, X, Y, and Z, and that was amazing. And now I can do all of these things. Any nurse that steps out like that, at least this has been my experience, is gets told that they're too much.
Right. I love seeing nursing students with that enthusiasm, but what disappoints me is I see it gradually fade out over time. And that's because they get squashed on when they do say stuff like that.
Yes.
And I think that we should support each other. And this is a whole other issue, but we kind of stomp it out of each other before it even becomes a thing.
Yes. Can you imagine what it would be like if we just said, that's amazing, tell me more? Yeah. and listen to nurses' experiences, and if that translated into the school experience, like if they had more nurse entrepreneurs, more nurses in non-traditional roles, what that would do to spark a generation of nurses that could be in so many other places, which is frankly where we need more nurses in business and at leadership tables, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I could go on forever.
Okay. One last question for you.
Yeah.
Are nurses in other provinces also performing psychotherapy, or is this Ontario specific?
So great question, Chanel. There's Ontario, as far as I understand it, as of yesterday, Ontario is the only province that regulates the practice of psychotherapy and the title of psychotherapy, and also decides which colleges can do that. So if you go, say, for example, to Prince Edward Island, when you look at their Regulated Health Professionals Act, it doesn't say that nurses can't do it. in the reserved list, but it doesn't specifically say we can. So it's very different province to province to province. In PEI, clinical or counseling therapist is a regulated term, but psychotherapist is not. So that it really does require you to do a lot of research and also reach out to the colleges in various provinces. For people that have reached out in various provinces, usually what we've heard in the Facebook group when other people have done it is that the college will say, oh, no, nurses don't really do that here. But it's not a forbidden thing. It's just nurses don't generally do that.
Right. We need more nurses doing that so they know about it.
Exactly. And, to which I would say, well, that's a load of hooey because we do that in our jobs every day. It's just not, maybe you don't see it as exclusively it. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. Well, I am so thankful that you were able to join us today, Sheena. I also just wanted to point out you're being very humble, but you recently won a Nurse Innovator Award. Do you want to share some information about that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I was really excited about that. The Nurse Innovator Award grant was a $20,000 grant that I was awarded for supporting nurses to move into nurse psychotherapy in my associate practice with the clinic in order to be able to mentor them into the practice, but then also be able to support their growth in psychotherapy. So that it's also to build up the infrastructure of the clinic so that I have an opportunity to showcase nurse psychotherapy and the nurse psychotherapists in a positive light on social media and through admin support. It was the winners of that I was really honored to be alongside them for sure.
Yeah, it's an honor to even speak to an award winner like yourself. So before we go, I'm just going to share how people can find myself, and Sheena, you can share as well. So if anyone's interested in learning more about non-traditional roles, or you need your resume done, cover letter, career coaching, interview coaching, just figuring out LinkedIn, you can reach out to me. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website, which is thernresume.com. If you're looking for a really supportive group of nurses off social media, I do have a new group called Nurses Breaking Free, and that is to help nurses find non-traditional roles. So we do weekly calls, we do monthly guest experts. We're actually going to be having a talk about nurse psychotherapy in the new year. So if you're interested in joining, I'll be putting the link in the notes here, or you can go to my website and look for that. And Sheena, I'll let you share how people can find you.
Sure. So just a little plug for Sara. Any of you who get a chance to work with Sara would be really lucky. So it's pretty amazing. And if you would like to get a hold of me, you can email me directly at sheena@acceptanceclinic.ca. You can look at, and my website is acceptanceclinic.ca. And if you're interested in the course, you could reach out to my assistant at hello@acceptanceclinic.ca, and she'll be able to give you the link and walk you through the process of getting on the wait list. It's almost half full now, so that's exciting. And then we're also, Acceptance Clinic is also on all the socials, and I'm on social media as well. So happy to connect in any which way would work for folks.
Okay, thank you everyone so much for joining. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.